Okay.
Hello, everyone. We're going to get started in a few moments. Thank you all for joining. Welcome, everyone. We're going to go live in a few moments. We're just waiting on a few more to join us from the waiting room.
While we're waiting, could everyone put their name and where they're from in the chat? And if you are with the group, that would be great. Then we could get to know a little bit more about you.
Welcome. Thank you all for joining. We're just waiting on a few more to join us from the waiting room. I see people from Chicago. I see people from County Line. I see lots of great people from all over the Chicagoland area and even some people from outside of Illinois in the chat. Welcome. Thank you all for joining. My name is Patrick. I'm one of the executive board members here with Indivisible Illinois. I'd like to introduce some of the other board members here. Marcy?
Hi, I'm Marcy. I am from Champaign. I am a member of Champaign County Indivisible, and I am an Indivisible Illinois executive board member. And I will turn it over to Melanie.
Hi, I'm Melanie Fager, and I am on the executive board, and I'm from the Greater Rockford area. Jeanette?
Hi, I'm Jeanette Quirk with Indivisible West Suburban Chicago and is Indivisible Chicago Alliance and the executive board. Oh, Linda.
Hi, I'm Linda Callis. I, again, am on the executive board. I'm also on leadership with Indivisible DuPage, and I'm also on a group that's called No Kings, No Lies. We do social media posting every other Friday, so I'm part of that also.
Fantastic. We're just waiting on a few more. Melanie, did you have a chance to go?
Yes,
Great.
I did.
All right, everyone, thank you all for joining. Again, my name is Patrick. I'm one of the executive board members here with Indivisible Illinois. We want to thank you for joining us for this live panel as well as training today. We're going to go over a couple of things, mainly tangible actions that we can take this summer for activism. I think many of us were very disappointed in the Supreme Court's decisions, the Supreme Court rolling back the Voting Rights Act, as well as a lot of the voter suppression that we're seeing all across the country. We know that the gerrymandering that the MAGA Republicans, Trump specifically, is pushing for across the country could potentially jeopardize our democracy for a generation. But there are steps that we can take to fight back. And we're going to talk about a lot of those steps. You know, we love the protesting and doing the various protests. That is one way to do it. But we also want to talk about a few tangible actions that we can take. So we're going to go over a few of those tangible actions that we can take. We realize that we're going to lose quite a few districts in the South. So we know we need to be much more organized here in the North and in blue states in general, and in some of our surrounding battleground states. So we're going to talk with you about many of the efforts that we are going to take, not only to potentially pick up districts here in Illinois, but also in our surrounding battleground states. And we also want to make sure that we protect those districts that we do have here in Illinois. So we're going to talk a lot about that, and we are going to end everything up with the training that's going to be very practical that all of you can engage in that will help us to increase our electorate as a whole. So I want to hand it over now to Jeanette, who's going to talk with you all about a few of the active committees that Indivisible Illinois has that you can get engaged with.
Hi, everybody. When I joined Indivisible Illinois board, I got to see a lot of people writing in their finely honed opinions on things that we should do. And after, you probably get that too in your groups. And after a while, I just kept saying, we've got a committee for that. So I'm going to tell you real quick about the committees that we have for all those things that that really are about, to me right now, everything's about the midterms. I'm going to start with the Voter Engagement Committee. There are so many ways for people to get involved and let everybody who just says one little thing about I feel like I should do something on the Voter Engagement Committee. You can do that. We've got organizing and participating in voter registration, which I know a lot of people really love. We support campaigns with phone and text banking drives. And then we provide local candidate support, as well as looking at the swing states with significant elections. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Committee number 2, we got a communication committee. That's the best way to share information. There's the posting content, monitoring posts on all the social media accounts. So if you are facile with that, we could really use you for Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky, and especially TikTok. So anybody learning more about TikTok, please check us out. One committee that we're really building up right now, then the third one is the Illinois Legislation Tracking Committee. So we're going to be tracking and documenting Illinois legislation, so in state, to ensure that groups around the state can reach out to their reps to support whatever policy and legislation that is consistent with our goals and values. We've got a group member outreach committee, committee number 4. Its main focus is to reach out and support those new groups. We still have new groups coming in, or groups that are kind of trying to build themselves and build capacity. And so that's one of our big goals as an umbrella group for Illinois, to help with that. So if you hear about people that need help, or you feel like you could build out your group or get groups started, the outreach committee can really help with that. And we could use more folks like you on it. We've also got an administrative committee, and they assist all the other committees. There's a lot of Google Docs that get made. There's always a lot of back office work that if people can fit something, into their time that just takes a computer and a couple other skills, the administrative committee is something you can really help us with. Last but not least, we have a fundraising committee. We don't have an active fundraising event going on right now, but stay tuned for more details on that. All right, that is a summary of our main committees, 6 of them.
Thank you, Jeanette. All right. I want to hand it over now to Marcy, who's going to talk with you all about just some of the active actions that we are taking with our phone banking committee. This is a way that anyone can get very actively engaged from the safety of their own home. You can do it on weekends. We have those phone banks. I'm going to let Marcy tell you just about the phone banks that we have coming up and what our plans are around phone banking and how we can save democracy with a lot of these phone banks.
Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, as Patrick said, my name's Marcy. I'm the phone bank lead, and we do phone banking pretty frequently. We've done it for issues. We've done it for candidates. We're still going to do it that way. Just recently, we phone banked into Virginia for for their redistricting election, which of course, what happened with that, with their Supreme Court. Hopefully that will still go through. We also have recently, actually just yesterday was the last one. We phone banked into Georgia for their Supreme Court candidates, and also for their for another candidate that's also running for the appeals court. And the reason we were doing that is because in Georgia, their judicial elections are specifically during their primaries. That is their general for their judiciary, and whoever gets voted in tomorrow is going to be the new judiciary for them, and they definitely need more democratic candidates to get elected. Anyway, but we also have done for other candidates in the past. We will do that also in the fall. Also, we have done issue-oriented phone banks. For those of you who have been phone banking with us for a long time, you remember that we called into the 3 Republican districts in Illinois about Medicaid to let their constituents know that their members of Congress voted to cut Medicaid and what that meant for them. And we really need to tell people about these things because people do not know. That is why phone banking is so important. And you can do it, as Patrick said, you do it from your own home. We do it on Zoom together, and it's like it's being in the same room, just a Zoom room as opposed to a room that is in a certain spot. And and like I said, it's real. We really have a good time, and it's productive. You don't have to worry about going anywhere. So please join our phone banks. Those of you who have been on them, you know that we have a really good time. So thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. And along that same vein, we also have our canvases that we are doing all across the state. So we're going to be gearing back up with carpool canvases. Many of you were engaged with us with those carpool canvases that we did around the presidential election. We know that we need to go into battleground districts in order to make sure that we pick up as many seats as possible, not only here in Illinois, but in the battleground states that are surrounding us as well. We're lucky to live here in Illinois, which is a blue state where we have mainly Democratic representation, people that respect the Constitution. But there are many states that surround us that are battleground states, and they need our support. So since there are many areas that will be very, very safe here in Illinois, we want to make sure that we are sending people not only to these battleground states, but some districts here in Illinois that we could potentially pick up. So we will be sending people to Wisconsin. We're going to be sending people to Iowa. We'll be sending people to Michigan as well, and we'll look at a couple of other places as well if it makes sense for us to send people to these very, very key congressional districts. We know that we need to pick up every seat that we possibly can, especially with a lot of the gerrymandering and the erasing of seats that we're seeing in the South and in some of the other red states. So we know we need to make sure to pick up these potential seats and support our fellow Democrats in surrounding states. So we're going to be sending carpools into those states. If you're interested in signing up for one of these carpools, we will definitely have information out about that. It's essentially we'll have a driver who drives to the state. We'll get 3 to 4 people that fit in a car for those of you who weren't out involved. And we'll go and we'll knock on doors in those key battleground districts. Not only are there key battleground districts, there's some Senate races that are going to be happening as well, U.S. Senate races. And we want to make sure that we are there to support those particular races as well that are happening quite near us. So there's going to be a lot more information out about that very soon. We're going to have some dates that are set aside where we'll be going into these battleground states. Not only are we going to be going into these battleground states, but we're also going to be going into a key district in Illinois. We know that there is one district in Illinois that is the greatest potential for pickup, and we need to put all of our resources that we can into that district. And we'll talk a little bit more about that district. It's the Illinois 16th Congressional District a little later on in the programming, but that is a very, very key district, and we want to make sure that we're getting as many people into that district to knock on doors as possible. It's a district that people have overlooked for many years, but we believe that this is our greatest potential for picking up a seat. There's a great candidate that's in that district. We'll talk about that momentarily, but I do want to hand it over to Linda to talk a little bit about the legislative committee and what we're doing just around legislation before we get into that.
All right, thanks, Patrick. So Jeanette talked about this a little bit, but it's this is focused on Illinois, so kind of getting away from the Washington, D.C. for a minute. It's important to understand what is going on in our state and what kind of legislation is out there that really supports our values. For 2 reasons. One, obviously, with everything going on in Washington, the state is our support, right? We have to try to make up for what we're missing from the lack of leadership or the horrible leadership in Washington, D.C. But even under normal circumstances, the state is very important to our everyday lives. So this group, this legislative committee, is fairly new. We started it probably in January, and the focus is to sift through the legislation that is being talked about in Springfield and finding the important ones, the ones that we really want to push. And so there is a need for people to volunteer for this committee who will help figure out what legislation we should really focus on. We have a small group that's doing this already, but we definitely can use more people. And we don't like to reinvent the wheel. So what we do is we try to look at groups that are very active in a certain field, like let's say healthcare, and use them as an information a way to find out information about important legislation. But in order to track all this information, we need people. So that's one of the activities that the committee would be working on. Like I say, we have a group already, but we could definitely use more people. The other thing then that this group is doing is we meet about every 2 weeks and we look at what we've found, and we have it on a spreadsheet for all leaders around the state to look at. But we kind of figure out a couple pieces of legislation that we think is important to focus on and focus groups on. So we create a short piece of information that goes out in our email that we send from Indivisible Illinois. So that's what that group does. So if you're interested in, if you really like following legislation, I should mention the other part of our process is to make sure that we're keeping track of when a witness slip is needed to be filled out. For those of you that get notifications about that, you'll know that sometimes you find out the day before. So we're trying to find a methodology, and we think we're pretty close to know when those witness slips are coming up in the following week and get notification out to people, say, hey, fill out this witness slip to show you're supporting this legislation because they're going to be talking about it in Springfield. So that's what that group does. The other group that we are looking for help with is we're calling them the delegates. And what these people are doing is they would be part of one of the groups around Illinois, one of the indivisible groups around Illinois, and they would be getting this information from the legislative committee and making sure that somebody in the group is talking to your representatives. Because the whole idea of tracking this is to find out what representatives are supporting the legislation, are they sponsors, and who isn't. And so if we think there's a piece of legislation that's really important, and we have noted that, here's the representatives who are sponsoring it, you can then see, well, my representative isn't sponsoring it. So then you want to reach out to them, either their staff or them, if you can, and start building a relationship and find out, why aren't you supporting it? And, maybe there's something we don't know that we could learn. So this second group is called the delegates. So they are from different groups, and they help their groups make sure that they're reaching out to their reps. And if somebody's interested in doing that, the part where you actually reach out to your representatives, talk to them about legislation, find out why they're not sponsoring it, and you don't belong to an indivisible group at this point, that's okay. I'm going to put the sign-up forms for both of these roles in the chat when I'm done. If you don't belong to a group yet, just say, put your information in, say I don't belong to a group, let us know about where you live, and then we'll find a group for you. But both of these pieces are important. It's finding the legislation that's important, and then making sure that around the state, we are reaching out to our representatives who, for whatever reason, are not sponsoring what we think is important legislation. So I'm done with that. I'll put the two sign-up forms in the chat.
Thank you, Linda, and we can't stress how important that is. It's great once we get, fantastic representatives in office, but we want to make sure that we kind of hold their feet to the fire and making sure that they are supporting good pieces of legislation that reflect our values. And this is what this legislative committee is focused on. When we know there are great pieces of legislation that are coming through, we want to make sure that we are giving them the cover and the support that they need to support a lot of these great pieces of legislation. So the legislative committee is going to be handling a lot of that. You can sign up for it through the link there. One thing I do want to talk about before we start to talk a little bit about the 16th Congressional District, many of us are upset about what we've seen from the Supreme Court, the decision that came down, the gerrymandering that we're seeing in multiple states, what we're seeing in Florida, what we're seeing in many of the southern states, the overturn of Virginia, what we saw there. We know what Trump's game is for this election. His game is to pick up as many seats as possible by rigging the deck. So we know that we have to be very active to pick up as many seats as we can in areas that are battlegrounds or that are blue states where we could potentially pick up seats. So one of those particular districts is the 16th Congressional District. I'm going to hand it over to Melanie, who's going to talk to you a little bit about this. This is our best chance to pick up an additional seat in Illinois. And one thing that I want you all to remember is that if you remember when we flipped a lot of the districts in the collar counties, the 6th congressional, the 14th, other districts, people didn't believe that we could flip these districts at the start. We made that change possible by organizing, by getting out there, by canvassing, by having activism, by making people aware of their elected officials' positions. And we flipped districts that had previously been strongly, strongly conservative. And we can do the same thing in the 16th congressional districts. And I'm going to hand it over to Melanie, who's going to talk with you all about that.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. So I live here in the 16th, and I have been volunteering with Paul Nolly's campaign. I definitely see several names on here of people I know who also live in the 16th and have been working on doing everything we can for this campaign so far. I think one of the most exciting things, and thank you, yes, whoever just shared the link in the chat right to his website. Um, I think one of the most exciting things for me is it's not just that we have a candidate who's ready to go up against the hood, it's that we have a good candidate and we have an organized, group of volunteers. We have a lot of momentum and we have someone who's really worth getting behind too. So it's not just having someone run against the hood that's the only thing going here. So I'm so excited to tell you guys a little bit about Paul. He is from the Rockton-Roscoe area like me, so up north of Rockford. If you know anything about the 16th, it is one of our windy districts. It goes from Harvard all the way over to Galena, down Dixon to past Dixon, Peoria, Bloomington Normal. So we've got quite the area of coverage. I think it covers portions of about 23 counties here. Um, so Paul currently works as a executive director for Project First Rate, which is a coalition of the building trades and the unions around here. So he spends a lot of his time really reaching out to young people about apprenticeships, about working on things related to getting people involved with the unions, spreading the word about union jobs. And I think that really just kind of leads into what I've heard from him on his campaign and what I know about him. One of the biggest contrasts to the incumbent is that Paul is all about like normal people. And I don't know how else to say that as simply as that. He is all about normal people and normal families and thinking about workers and good jobs and how, people that are mine and Paul's age, in our upper 30s, are thinking about things like childcare and affordable housing. And that's something that no matter what our age is, we're all thinking about right now. But it's just a wild time for people to have young families. And I really have heard him talk passionately about how that is why he's entered the campaign. Aside from things like union jobs, affordable childcare, housing, he has also just been talking a lot about just our basic rights in general as we've seen all of these things unfold over the last few months. He has some great backing from unions, both nationally and statewide, as well as local chapters. Labor's pretty much been all in on this, which is really exciting. We're up against a lot when we think about LaHood and his, MAGA money funds. So the fact that he's really committed to being funded by like everyday people and not by corporations and not by billionaires, I think says a lot as well. Um, Aside from that, though, in terms of small donations, a really exciting thing is that just this first quarter of this year, the campaign outraised the last two opponents of LaHood's entire campaigns just in the first quarter. So while we have a long way to go, right, and there's a lot left to do, it's very exciting when we see things like numbers and as well as the organized volunteers who are really getting this going. He recently has added some full-time staff. And there's just a lot to get done. And as Patrick said, the big piece of all of this is going to be the work that we're going to put in the next few months. Even just in my own neighborhood, when I've been out canvassing and when I've been out, helping when we initially got him on the ballot, I have neighbors who are former or former Trump supporters that are, having big changes of thoughts and are looking for something new. And I think that we're seeing that just kind of across the board, right? We know that that's been happening in other elections as well, that people are looking for a change, and people are just looking for some hope as well. So I'm really excited about all of that. I'm excited to have a fresh face. He's committed to holding in-person town halls, which, if you know anything about LaHood, we can't find the guy and we can't get a hold of him, and he shows up for some cool photo ops. So I'm very excited about that. Yeah, I feel like those are the highlights, but the campaign is off to a really, really great start, and I'm really excited for anything that Indivisibles can do. And there's a large area that the 16th covers, so there's going to be a piece of it that's going to be close to almost anybody if you're in Illinois. So thanks, Patrick.
And that's the thing. Thank you, Melanie. And that's the thing about the 16th congressional district is it is a fairly large congressional district. So they need our support in order to cover every part of that district. And just as Melanie mentioned, there are a lot of former Trump voters that are very upset right now. We're even seeing a lot of his former strongest supporters in Congress right now who are turning against some of the things that he's doing. They're openly speaking against them. We're also seeing voters that are upset with Trump, and LaHood has been someone that's been strongly supported by Trump. So this is a district that we know is a potential pickup. And I see in the chat, someone asked if there's a map of the district. Absolutely. Before the end of the night, we will send a map of the district for you. It goes across a large proportion of the state. So if you are anywhere, as Melanie said, within Illinois, there is a part of the 16th congressional district that is close to you. Think of it going from the Bloomington Normal area, it's there, it's in the Rockford area, it's over a large chunk of the state. So we will definitely get that map out to you so that you can find out more about the district as a whole. In addition to that, I know we spoke a little bit about the carpool canvassing that we will be doing all into the 16th congressional district, as well as other battleground districts that surround us. We'll be doing that very shortly. We also have our neighborhood canvas leader program. And essentially what our neighborhood canvas leader program is it's people going into a district, taking ownership over a specific district, and going back to that district again and again to build that relationship within the district. We want to talk with voters about issues, perhaps their elected officials' positions on the issues, LaHood's positions on the issues, other elected officials' positions on the issues, and start to build that relationship with those voters. Because when voters tend to build a relationship with you, when they see you more than one time, they're going to believe what you have to say a little bit more. And there are lots of places in the state, even maybe your own precincts, you're interested in taking ownership over that. We can supply you with that information so that you're able to take ownership over that specific area and continue to go and canvass in that area and build those relationships with voters in the area. We'll make sure to put the link to the Neighborhood Canvas Leader program as well into the chat so that you can sign up for that to go out and really talk with people, not about party politics, but just talk with them about issues that you and they are concerned with, kitchen table issues that everyone's concerned with prices being so high, with wars raging overseas. We want to talk with voters about these things and how it's affecting their day-to-day lives. So I am, before we do that, is there anything else that any of the board members would like to bring up before we get into the training? If not, we're going to do a bit of a training on just how we can potentially expand our electorate here in Illinois. Also, this applies to some of the other states that surround us as well. But we're really going to focus on Illinois with this, but this is something that actually applies to states that surround us as well. We know that we can expand the electorate, and there are a few ways that we can do that. In Illinois, we are very, very lucky that we have a permanent vote by mail list. So we're going to talk a little bit about that permanent vote by mail list and how we can get people signed up for the permanent vote by mail list. This is very important. We've seen in some counties, DuPage County, for example, we've seen that the permanent vote by mail list has led to strong Democratic wins. If people are receiving a ballot for every election, whether it's off-year election, like the midterms that are coming up, whether it's a municipal election, those will be coming up very soon as well. Getting people signed up for that permanent vote by mail list means that they're always going to receive a ballot, and it's much easier to get them to the polls if a ballot is coming to their house. You can talk with them about who the candidates are and the issues for that particular race, but there's a ballot that comes to them so that if something happens, if their child has a recital, or if they are sick, or if it's snowing, or if other things are happening, bad weather, we know that it's going to be very easy for them to vote. So we definitely want to increase the electorate by making sure that we're getting people signed up for that permanent vote by mail list, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We also want to talk with you all about registering voters and getting people signed up to register to vote. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well, and just how to do that voter registration. We were